This video is about Europe's historical wars that altered the course of time. Subscribe for more. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow over the war-torn fields of Europe. Clouds of smoke billowed in the distance, remnants of battles fought and lives lost. In a makeshift military camp, Major Samuel Thompson of the United States Army leaned over a weathered map, his eyes narrowed in concentration. The year was 1944, and the Allies were poised to strike deep into Nazi-occupied territory. Thompson, a veteran of the North African campaign, was no stranger to war. His face bore the scars of conflict and his dark hair was flecked with grey. He was known for his strategic brilliance, but also for his uncompromising principles. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of urgency as men moved about, gathering supplies and preparing for the next phase of their mission. Across the map, the insignia of the Wehrmacht glared back at him, a stark reminder of the adversary they faced. Germany had unleashed chaos upon Europe, and Thompson felt the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for his country, he was fighting for a future where democracy could flourish. With every arrow drawn on that map, he plotted the path of liberation. In a dimly lit barracks, Sergeant Rachel Cohen was sharpening her skills as a radio operator. She was one of the first women to serve in combat support in the United States Army, armed with determination and a fierce will to prove her worth. The daughter of Jewish immigrants, Rachel carried the scars of her heritage. The horrors of the Holocaust were not merely statistics to her, they were personal. Her family had fled Europe, but many had not. Their memory fueled her resolve. "Rachel," Thompson called, breaking her concentration. "We were moving at dawn." She looked up, her blue eyes sharp and alert. "What is the target, Major?" "Operation Overlord, the big push into Normandy. We need to coordinate our forces if we are going to make this work." Rachel nodded, her fingers already dancing over the keys of the radio as she sent the urgent message. The crackle of static filled the air, followed by the distant sound of military vehicles revving up, preparing to embark on one of the most pivotal invasions in history. As darkness fell, shadows crept across the camp. The hum of machinery and chatter faded, replaced by the distant sounds of artillery. Major Thompson gathered his team, a mix of seasoned soldiers and fresh-faced recruits, all united in a singular purpose to dismantle the Nazi regime. Among them was Corporal David Schwarz, a young man who had immigrated from Germany to escape the very tyranny they were fighting against. He carried within him a mixture of guilt and hope, torn between the land of his birth and the land he now fought for. "This is our chance, isn't it?" David asked, gripping his rifle tightly. "To take back what was stolen from us." Thompson looked him in the eye, sensing the urgency in the young man's voice. "It is not just about reclaiming territory, David. It is about liberating souls, those who have suffered at the hands of tyranny. We have a responsibility." But even as hope flickered like a candle in the night, an unseen enemy loomed. Intelligence reports indicated a new weapon was in development in Germany, a secret project known only as amidst. The implications of such technology, capable of striking fear into the hearts of nations, sent chills through Thompson's spine. Meanwhile, across the ocean, in a small clandestine meeting in Jerusalem, a group of Israeli operatives convened under the cover of night. Among them was Captain Ariel Ben-Ani, a man whose resolve burned hotter than any bomb. The echoes of war resonated deeply within him, as he lost family in the Holocaust and had vowed never to let such atrocities happen again. Ariel's eyes swept over his comrades as he spoke. "We cannot afford to stand idly by as Germany develops weapons that could threaten our very existence." His words struck a chord with his fellow operatives, each of whom had their stories of loss and survival. They were not merely fighting against a regime, they were fighting for their identity, their future, and the hope of a homeland where they could be free. Back in Europe, the tension escalated. As the dawn of June 6 approached, Thompson's camp was abuzz with final preparations. Men double-checked their gear and shared nervous laughter, knowing that tomorrow they would face the heart of darkness. The stakes couldn't be higher, and every moment felt charged with destiny. "Are you ready for this?" Rachel asked, catching Thompson alone for a moment. He gazed into the distance, remembering the faces of those he had lost along the way. "Ready or not, we are going to make history tomorrow. And we won't go down without a fight." As thunderous waves of the English Channel loomed ahead, the weight of the mission settled on their shoulders. The Allies were not just fighting for their countries, they were fighting for all of Europe, for an end to the tyrannical grip of fascism. But unbeknownst to them, the Germans were aware of their plans. High in the mountains of Bavaria, a shadowy figure named Wilhelm Becker, a scientist, worked tirelessly on the Venus 2 project. Haunted by the moral implications of his work, he wrestled with the knowledge that he was building a weapon that could obliterate entire cities. Becker received reports of the Allied invasion but felt powerless. Torn between loyalty to his homeland and the horror of what he was creating, he found himself at a crossroads. Would he continue to build a weapon of mass destruction, or would he find a way to sabotage it? The hour drew nearer, and as dawn approached, Thompson and his men gathered for a final briefing. The sky brightened with hues of orange and pink, but the sense of foreboding loomed heavier than ever. Rachel, clasping her radio, felt the weight of history in her hands. "Tomorrow, we will either change the course of the war or become a footnote," Thompson declared, his voice steady. "But we cannot forget what we are fighting for. Each of you carries the weight of the past, carry it well." As the first rays of light illuminated the camp, they stood together, united in purpose yet haunted by the spectre of what lay ahead. The battle for Europe was about to commence, a clash of ideologies that would not only shape nations but redefine humanity itself. And as the first sounds of dawn broke, signaling the beginning of Operation Overlord, the fates of the characters intertwined in a way none could anticipate. History was about to turn, but in what direction? Would the Allies break the chains of tyranny, or would the shadows of war prevail? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, shrouded in uncertainty and blood, waiting to be unveiled in the chaos of battle. As they stepped onto the path of war, one truth echoed through them all: history is not merely written by the victors, but determined in the heart of every soldier who fights for a better tomorrow. In the distance, the guns roared, and the stage was set for a confrontation that would echo through time. The curtain was about to rise on the most significant conflict Europe had ever seen, and within it, the fate of the world hung delicately in the balance. The stakes were higher than ever. The morning sun emerged from behind the clouds, casting a golden hue over the Allied encampment, a stark contrast to the dark realities they faced. Major Thompson gathered his men one last time before the onslaught began. The weight of history pressed heavily on him, a burden he shared with every soldier standing at attention. "Today is not just about defeating an enemy," he began, his voice rising above the sounds of preparation. "When we land on those shores, we fight not only for our countries but for those who cannot fight for themselves. We honor their memory with each step we take." In the distance, the roar of landing crafts echoed as they readied themselves to breach the beaches of Normandy. Each soldier appeared steely-eyed, fortified by a sense of purpose that transcended fear. Rachel meticulously checked her radio gear, ensuring her connection to the 101st Airborne was intact. "I'll be your eyes and ears, Major," she promised, her gaze unwavering. Meanwhile, Captain Ariel Ben-Ami and his team in Jerusalem had their eyes firmly set on the horizon, knowing that the outcome of the war would reverberate through their homeland. The clandestine meeting in the shadows was charged with a sense of urgency. "The V-2 project poses a direct threat to our future," Ariel asserted, his voice steady yet laced with intensity. "If we do not act now, we may lose everything we've fought for. We must gather intelligence, disrupt their operations, and ensure that the horrors of the past do not return." His compatriots nodded in agreement, each harboring the weight of their past traumas. They understood that their mission was not just about the present, it was about securing a future where their people could thrive. As they prepared for a covert operation to infiltrate German lines, the stakes were painfully clear. Failure could spell doom for millions. Back in Europe, as the first wave of Allied troops prepared to disembark, Thompson felt a flutter of anxiety. The ship stirred the waters, and the men aboard could sense the adrenaline coursing through their veins. "Remember, chaos will reign. Stick to your training and trust in one another. We've prepared for this moment. Now it is time to seize it," Thompson encouraged. "Major," Rachel's voice cut through the din. "The 101st is reporting heavy enemy fire along the beach. The drop zones are compromised." Panic surged through the camp. The meticulously planned operation was now threatened by unforeseen circumstances as enemy forces scrambled to defend their territory. The landing crafts lurched forward, crashing against the beach as the soldiers prepared to storm the shores of Normandy. The air thickened with the acrid smell of gunpowder and saltwater, and the sounds of chaos erupted around them. Bullets ricocheted as Thompson led his men into the fray. He felt a surge of adrenaline as he charged forward, heart racing, ready to confront the forces that had wrought so much suffering across Europe. As they landed, a hail of enemy fire greeted them. Thompson felt the sharp sting of adrenaline as his instincts kicked in. He ducked behind a sand dune, scanning the area for his men. "Advance, move toward the cliffs," he shouted, voice hoarse over the din of battle. Rachel's fingers danced on the radio, relaying critical updates as the battle raged on. "Major, we need air support," she cried into the receiver. The chaos intensified as the Allies fought for every inch of ground. Soldiers fell around them, their cries swallowed by the cacophony of war. Thompson's mind raced with thoughts of the lives at stake, each one representing a potential future sacrifice to tyranny. On the German side of the battle, Wilhelm Becker watched the invasion unfold from his covert command post. The sight of Allied troops storming the beach ignited a conflict within him. The weapon he helped develop could turn the tide in favor of the Reich, yet here were men risking their lives to stop the very machinery he had helped create. Becker's heart pounded as he weighed his loyalties against his conscience. He could not allow these men to perish without a chance. "Activate the V-2 launch," the command rang out. Becker's hands trembled as he approached the control panel. "No," he whispered to himself. A realization washed over him. He had to act, and he had to act fast. He hacked into the system, rerouting the launch codes. The weapon was meant to be a tool of destruction, but he would turn it into a failsafe for the Allies. Meanwhile, amidst the chaos on the beaches, Corporal David Schwarz fought alongside his comrades. He fought not only for the future of Europe, but for his own redemption. Every bullet he fired felt like an act of defiance against the past he had escaped. "Keep moving," he urged a fellow soldier, pulling him from the ground as they pushed toward the enemy lines. The sight of the German bunkers, fortified and menacing, filled him with both dread and determination. As Thompson rallied his men, he spotted Rachel, who was now crouched behind a crumbling barrier, desperately trying to maintain contact with the airborne units. "Can you reach them?" he shouted above the din. She nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I am attempting to get coordinates for their positions. We need them to target the gun emplacements." The roar of artillery made communication nearly impossible, but Rachel's unwavering resolve shone through. "We will not lose this day, Major." Back in Jerusalem, Ariel and his team prepared to infiltrate a German supply route. They had received intel about a shipment containing crucial components for the V-2 project. Their mission was simple yet perilous: disrupt the supply chain to buy time for the Allied forces. Under the cloak of night, they donned stealth gear and moved with purpose, hearts pounding in unison as they navigated the labyrinth of trenches. As they approached the German encampment, Ariel's thoughts drifted to the grandparents he had lost to the Holocaust. Their memories spurred him forward, fueling a fire of resolve. As they silently dispatched guards, a weight of vengeance and justice coursed through them. They were not just fighting a war, they were reclaiming their past, their identity. Back on the beaches of Normandy, the tide of battle fluctuated as the Allies fought with everything they had. Thompson rallied a group of soldiers to advance toward the German fortifications. "We push forward. For Europe. For freedom," he shouted, each word igniting a spark within his men. As they pressed on, the sound of gunfire mingled with the roar of waves, creating a symphony of chaos. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying. Thompson felt the impact reverberate through his body. From the corner of his eye, he saw a shadow darting toward him. David, out of breath, eyes wide with urgency. "Major, the Germans are regrouping for a counterattack," he warned, grabbing Thompson's arm. "We must hold our ground. We can't let them push us back." Amidst the chaos, Rachel's voice crackled through the radio. "Major, we have a report of a potential V-2 launch. We need to take out that facility." The words sent a chill down Thompson's spine. "We need to end this once and for all," he declared to David and the remaining men. "Let us break their hold on this beach." As they pushed forward, hope flickered in the distance like a candle fighting against the dark. But would it be enough? The tide of battle was ever shifting, and uncertainties loomed like storm clouds overhead. Thompson glanced at the horizon, where more Allied troops were landing, a sign of reinforcements. Yet the question remained: could they hold the line long enough to turn the tide of the war? As the sun rose higher in the sky, illuminating the battle-scarred landscape, the characters found their fates intertwined in ways they could never have anticipated. Each step they took on that beach was a step toward history, a moment that would echo through time. Their struggles were only beginning as they faced an enemy willing to fight to the last breath. Back in Bavaria, Becker made a critical decision that would alter the course of everything. Standing at the precipice of his own moral dilemma, he weighed the fate of millions against his own life. The clock was ticking, and the echoes of war were calling. Would he find a way to sabotage the weapon he helped create, or would history's dark path continue unabated? As the battle for Europe raged on, the stakes couldn't be higher. With every passing moment, destiny hung in the balance, waiting for someone to tip the scale. The next chapter of this war was about to unfold, and it would determine not just the fate of nations, but the essence of humanity itself. The storm was brewing, and the winds of change were ready to strike. The outcome would ultimately decide whether Europe would rise from the ashes of tyranny or fall deeper into the abyss of despair. The battle for Normandy raged on, a relentless tide of violence as Allied soldiers fought through the chaos. Thompson, adrenaline coursing through his veins, moved from one position to another, rallying the troops. The beach, once a pristine stretch of sand, was now a graveyard strewn with the lifeless bodies of men who had fought for a cause far greater than themselves. He locked eyes with David, who was crouched behind a shattered barricade, firing at a German machine gun nest that unleashed a torrent of bullets, threatening their advance. "Cover me," Thompson shouted, tightening his grip on his rifle. He knew they had to push forward. They couldn't afford to lose momentum. With a nod from David, he sprinted across the exposed ground, heart pounding, dodging enemy fire. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown, but he clung to the hope that surged within him. Freedom was within reach, but it demanded their utmost sacrifice. Meanwhile, Rachel's fingers flew over the radio as she relayed urgent messages, her mind racing to keep up with the chaos unfolding around her. "Major, the 101st is regrouping, but they're repinned down," she shouted into the receiver, her voice steady despite the fear tugging at her heart. "They need air support now. They're requesting immediate assistance," Thompson barked, his voice cutting through the din of battle as he took cover beside Rachel. The sound of artillery shells whistling overhead filled him with both dread and determination. "We have to coordinate with the airborne units. If we can break the German lines, we'll have a chance to take back the beach." As Rachel relayed the coordinates, her heart raced at the stakes. She thought of her family, of all those who had suffered, and it fueled her resolve. "We're not backing down, Major, not now." Her voice rang with conviction, inspiring confidence in the men around her. On the German side, Becker's internal struggle deepened. Watching the spectacle of war unfold through the grimy glass of his command post, he felt the weight of his decisions. The V-2 project was designed to bring destruction, but now it seemed like a tool of fate. He was a cog in a machine that tore lives apart, yet his heart yearned for peace. The sounds of men fighting and dying echoed in his mind, drowning out the fervor of patriotism that once guided him. "No more," he whispered to himself, a decision crystallizing within him. He couldn't stand by as the weapon he designed became an instrument of mass destruction. Becker turned back to the control panel, fingers trembling as he prepared to disrupt the launch codes. He held the fate of millions in his hands, and this time, he chose to be a hero. Back on Omaha Beach, Thompson guided his men forward, shouting encouragement amidst the chaos. With every inch gained, hope flickered like a flame in the darkness. "We're almost there. Push forward," he urged, leading the charge toward the German fortifications. They were met with a barrage of fire, but the soldiers pressed on, driven by the desire for freedom, for a world where tyranny wouldn't reign. "Major, we need to flank them," David shouted, spotting an opening on the right side of the enemy line. "They do it," Thompson ordered, adrenaline surging through him as he saw the glint of possibility in David's eyes. As David led a group of men to the right, Thompson and Rachel focused on the gun emplacements. With the air support still on the way, they had to buy time and hold the line. As the sky darkened with smoke and the sun struggled to break through, Rachel's radio crackled with an incoming message. "Major, this is Flight 234. We're en route, but we need a clear line of sight." The pilot's voice, strained yet determined, filled Rachel with urgency. "Copy that. We'll keep the enemy distracted. Just get in position," she shouted, her heart racing as she prepared to relay the coordinates for the attack. The seconds felt like hours, and with every passing moment, the fate of the battle hung precariously in the balance. In the distance, the thunder of artillery punctuated the air as men fought valiantly for their lives. The Allies were slowly pushing back, but the Germans were relentless. Thompson glanced at David, who was coordinating flanking movements with unwavering resolve. Thompson shouted, and together they charged toward the enemy line, rifles raised, ready to confront the darkness. As the air support finally arrived, a cheer erupted among the troops. Bombers soared overhead, dropping payloads that exploded with a thunderous roar, shattering the defenses that had held them back for far too long. The ground trembled as the Germans scrambled to regroup, their hold on the beach beginning to wane. Thompson called, exhilaration surging through him as the tide began to turn. "Advance, push them back." The soldiers followed his lead, rushing forward, the sound of their footsteps blending with the roar of gunfire and explosions. In the heart of Jerusalem, Ariel and his team moved swiftly through the shadows, intent on disrupting the German supply route. Their mission was fraught with danger, but every step felt like a step toward justice. The night was alive with the sounds of war, and as they approached the encampment, Ariel felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. The past fueled their resolve, and they were determined to ensure that the horrors they had faced would not be repeated. "Stay low and move fast," Ariel instructed, eyes scanning for guards. Every heartbeat echoed the urgency to succeed. They moved like specters through the dark, shadows melting with the night as they approached the supplies destined for the V-2 project. Each crate they passed held the very technology that threatened their future, and Ariel's heart raced with the knowledge of what was at stake. As they positioned themselves to sabotage the shipment, Ariel's resolve solidified. "For our families," he whispered, remembering the loved ones lost to the horrors of genocide. "We fight for their memory." His comrades nodded in solidarity, and with a swift motion they set to work, determined to disrupt the machinery of war. Back in Normandy, the battle reached its climax. Thompson and David fought fiercely, driven by a purpose that transcended mere survival. The beaches were littered with the remnants of war, but the Allies had gained ground, reclaiming what was lost with every foot they pushed forward. "Major," Rachel's voice broke through the chaos as she pointed toward the horizon. "The victory is within our grasp. Hold the line," Thompson shouted, rallying his men as they surged forward. The air was thick with smoke and the cries of the wounded, but hope surged through the ranks, lifting their spirits. The Allies pressed on, fueled by the belief that they were reclaiming a future stolen from them. Meanwhile, Becker stood at a precipice, his heart pounding as he prepared to disable the V-2 system. The faces of the soldiers fighting on the beaches flashed in his mind, men like Thompson and David, willing to lay down their lives for a cause greater than themselves. No longer could he be complicit in their destruction. Just as he was about to input the final command, he heard footsteps behind him. His heart raced. Had he been discovered? He turned to find a guard approaching, weapons drawn, eyes filled with purpose. "Stop right there," the guard shouted, raising his weapon. Becker's mind raced. In that moment, he realized he had to act quickly. He couldn't let the weapons be unleashed upon the world. With resolve, he lunged forward, a desperate fight for a better future igniting within him. As the battle in Normandy reached its fever pitch, the tide turned in favor of the Allies. Waves of bravado surged through the troops as they pushed deeper into enemy territory, fueled by the voices of those they had lost and those they fought to save. Thompson roared, leading the final charge toward the German emplacements, fully aware that the outcome of this day would echo through history. With the fate of nations hanging in the balance, the final confrontations approached, and destiny awaited on the horizon. Would the Allies succeed in reclaiming their future, or would the darkness of war consume them all? As the smoke cleared and the sounds of battle echoed, the answer loomed just beyond reach, a question that would soon demand an answer in the relentless march of history. The storm of war raged on, and as the next chapter of their intertwined fates began to unfold, the stakes could not have been higher. With the outcome uncertain, the very essence of humanity awaited its reckoning, and destiny was poised to strike. The clash on the beaches of Normandy intensified, each wave of Allied soldiers pushing against the relentless German fire. Major Samuel Thompson, his uniform stained with sweat and grit, felt the urgency of history pressing hard against his chest. The tide had begun to turn, but the cost was steep. "Keep moving forward," he shouted to his men, determination etched across his weary face. Behind him, Sergeant Rachel Cohen moved with a fierce clarity, her hands deftly manipulating the radio. "The air support is in position," she relayed, her voice cutting through the chaos. "They're retargeting the gun emplacements now." As the bomber soared overhead, Thompson's heart raced with the hope of victory mingled with the dread of loss. In the distance, Rachel could see the telltale plumes of smoke as the bombs struck home, and the German defenses began to buckle under the assault. The ground shook with the power of the explosions, a symphony of destruction that resonated deep into the core of every soldier present. "We have to capitalize on this," Thompson urged, rallying his men. "Forward, now." As they surged ahead, Corporal David Schwartz fought alongside them, the weight of his past driving him forward. Each bullet he fired felt like an act of liberation, not just for himself, but for those who had perished under the Nazi regime. He yelled, the fire of vengeance igniting within him as they pressed on. Meanwhile, in the shadows of Bavaria, Wilhelm Becker faced his own reckoning. A fight had broken out within his command post. He fought not just against an armed guard, but against the very creation that haunted his soul. "You don't understand," Becker shouted, desperation lacing his voice as he struggled against the soldier. If you launch that weapon, you're signing the death warrant for thousands. The guard's expression faltered, confusion mingling with duty, and Becker seized the opportunity. He twisted free and lunged for the control panel, fingers flying across the keys to disable the launch sequence. In Jerusalem, Captain Ariel Ben-Armi's team was deep into their mission, moving stealthily through the enemy encampment to disrupt the German supply lines. They understood that every crate they destroyed would delay the horrific weapon that Becker had so reluctantly crafted. "This is for our future," Ariel murmured to himself as he planted explosives on a shipment labeled for the V-2 project. He shared a glance with his comrades, each of them understanding the weight of their shared histories. As the timer ticked down, Ariel's heart raced with anticipation. "Get back," he ordered as they retreated to a safe distance. The explosion rocked the night, a brilliant flash illuminating the darkness, sending shockwaves through the camp. For a moment, the world felt suspended in time, the echoes of their defiance reverberating through the chaos of war. Back on the Normandy front, the battle raged on, but hope surged like the tide. With the German defenses faltering, Thompson and his men drove forward, reclaiming territory with every courageous step. "We're almost there. Keep pushing," Thompson shouted, adrenaline fueling his determination as he led the charge toward the enemy line. Behind him, the sounds of his men's shouts mingled with the roar of artillery, creating a cacophony of resistance that pushed back against the encroaching darkness. But just as victory seemed within reach, the German forces retaliated, regrouping with renewed ferocity. A sharp crack rang out, and Thompson felt a jolt as pain radiated through his shoulder. He faltered for a moment, grasping the wound, but the fire within him would not be extinguished. "I am okay," he shouted, gritting his teeth as he pressed on. "We have to hold the line." Rachel spotted him struggling and rushed to his side, her eyes wide with concern. "Major, we need to get you to safety," she urged, but he shook his head defiantly. "Not yet, Rachel, not until we break through." In her heart, she knew he was right. They were too close to turning the tide. Under Thompson's command, the Allied troops surged forward, gaining ground and pushing the Germans back toward the cliffs. The moment was electric, a palpable wave of hope coursing through their ranks as they fought for a future free from tyranny. They roared, voices unified in purpose, a battle cry reverberating through the chaos. Meanwhile, Becker's struggle had reached a critical juncture. He had managed to disable the V-2 launch codes, but the guards were not far behind him. He could hear their footsteps pounding against the floor, and with every second that passed, the stakes climbed higher. He had to finish the job. In a moment of clarity, Becker realized that while he couldn't change the past, he could influence the future. With a final keystroke, he erased the launch protocols, sealing the fate of the weapon he had once thought would secure Germany's dominance. As the Allied forces pressed their advantage, the horizon shimmered with the promise of victory. Each inch gained on Normandy's beaches felt like a reclaiming of history, a chance to rewrite a future stained by suffering. Thompson, fueled by the belief that they were fighting for something greater than themselves, rallied his men for a final push. Now, together, for every life lost, for every moment of anguish. His voice thundered, igniting a fierce resolve within his troops. With renewed vigor, the soldiers surged forward, the enemy defenses crumbling under the weight of their collective effort. They fought not just as soldiers, but as bearers of hope, determined to reclaim the narrative of Europe, to carve out a future unmarred by the shadows of tyranny. As the last of the German defenses fell, an eerie silence enveloped the beach. The sounds of battle began to fade, replaced by the shouts of victory echoing through the ranks of soldiers who had fought valiantly. "We did it," David cried, embracing his fellow soldiers amidst the remnants of war. Tears flowed freely as they realized the magnitude of their achievement. This day would be etched in history forever. In the distance, mist began to rise over the waves, signaling a new horizon, a place where unity and resilience would triumph over despair. Thompson, battered but unbroken, surveyed the battlefield, a sense of solemnity washing over him. They had paid a terrible price, but in the ashes of defeat, they had forged a path toward freedom. Back in Jerusalem, Ariel and his team celebrated their own success. They had disrupted the German supply lines, a small but significant victory in the grand tapestry of the war. "For our families," Ariel declared, raising a glass in salute. The pain of their past lingered, but they had carved out a space for hope, one that promised a brighter future. As the sun set over the horizon, casting golden rays across the remnants of war, the echoes of history began to weave a new narrative. It was one of resilience and defiance, of hope born amidst despair. Europe would rise from the ashes, scarred but resolute, carrying the memories of those lost while embracing the promise of a future nurtured in freedom. The threads of their stories, interwoven across nations and histories, spoke of a shared humanity that transcended borders. In the end, they had not just fought for land or power, but for the very essence of what it meant to be human. As the dawn broke upon the horizon, the world stood on the precipice of a new era, forever influenced by the sacrifices made in the name of freedom. The battle for Europe may have ended, but the fight for justice and peace would continue, echoing through history for generations to come.